Alright, so here's me trying to keep up on my promise of, blogging. So, it's a new month. It's actually almost the end of July. And so this is my July video, I guess. Alright, so, things that have been going on in my community. First of all, it's been a lot better this month. Things have definitely picked up from where things were headed in June, so that's super positive. And so I guess the big thing that I've been working on this month has actually been working on a community garden with a local NGO that exists in my community. So the local NGO that I work with is called PREC, and it stands for Poverty Reduction Empowerment Center. And PREC is actually this really cool organization that specifically looks for low-income students, primarily women, and helps raise money to help keep these students in school and also further their education beyond senior high school, which is the equivalent of high school in America. And so the way that PREC does this is the organization was started by two guys who are actually both engineers and focus primarily on agriculture. They're really cool guys. And what they did is they realized the fact that women weren't finishing senior high school in the community. So they wanted to come up with a way that would actually help women and low-income students be able to actually finish senior high school and then continue their education. And so they do this in various ways to help raise money. Some of it is through like making things like soap, like teaching the family members of these students how to make soap or how to make these kente bags, which are these really nice what are they called? Tote bags, really nice tote bags. And then the other ways they help students create money so they can stay in school is through agriculture. And so that's what I'm helping them out a lot with. So some of the things that they do is they'll identify the students, and then they give the students a pig, and they help the students raise the pig and then sell the pig. And then that money is then used to help further their education, and it is also a way to actually teach them about animal rearing. And they do other stuff too, like they have crops, farm-based crops, and they also grow mushrooms, and so they teach the students how to cultivate all of these different crops. And one of the really cool things is that the organization is very progressive in the sense that they're trying to use all organic methods of cultivating crops, and also just demonstrate the importance of sustainable farming practices, so like water conservation, agroforestry, intercropping, pollination, all of these things in order to have more viable crops. So they've been really awesome to work with because they've been very receptive of improving the types of farming techniques that they're using and also teaching them to the students, so the students have a better set of knowledge to go on to further their education. So PREC, it's great. They're awesome. I've really enjoyed working with them. So some of the things that we actually are starting now, PREC and I, is we're actually creating a community garden. And the point of the community garden is actually going to be a demonstration location for us to teach these sustainable farming practices to the community as a whole, rather than just working with students. And that's really awesome, because a lot of the people within my community are actually talking about the fact that they want to learn more about organic cultivation and more sustainable farming practices. And one of the primary reasons why they want to do that is the fact that chemical fertilizers and pesticides are heavily used here in Ghana, because the Ministry Office of Farming and Agriculture, or MOFA, just like hands out chemical fertilizers and pesticides at a really subsidized cost. So you get all these farmers who spend all of their crop money that they earn from selling their crops on buying these pesticides and fertilizers that are really low cost, because they believe that that's what they need in order to be able to grow their crops. And that's simply not true. And it also just like wastes a lot of their money. And also they just improperly apply the fertilizers and the pesticides and stuff, so they end up killing a bunch of like the micronutrients and organisms within the soil, and it causes a really big problem. Okay, so anyway, we're trying to circumvent that by having this demonstration farm in the community, and it to be a location where people can go to the farm, look at these different types of practices and techniques, and then adopt them for themselves. So super excited about that, because knowledge is power, and this is really going to be an opportunity to share the type of insight that I have, and also the insight that Prec has, and really create something that's sustainable for the community, and also extremely accessible. So that's really cool. One of the things too that I should say that's desperately needed about having this demonstration farm is because we live by the Black Volta River, which is like the largest body of water or river running through Ghana. And what that means is that a lot of the people within my community actually used to be fishermen. But there was the building of the Bowie Dam in my community, or nearby my community. And the dam was created in order to generate electricity from water, and also to try to curb water supply throughout the country. And with the building of this dam, it meant that the water level in the Black Volta actually got lower, which means the fish stock depleted because the water was so low. And that negatively impacted my community, because a majority of the community members were actually fishermen. And so now you have a lot of these former fishermen who are trying to figure out how to farm, so it just demonstrates as to why there's definitely, most absolutely, a need to have this type of demonstration farm in the community. So one of the things that Prec and I have really been talking about is trying to introduce these more sustainable farming techniques, and also trying to introduce more innovative and, I guess, accessible technologies. So what does that mean exactly? In Ghana, wealth stratification is pretty large, in the sense that you have urban areas, or these cities like Accra, the capital, and Kumasi, and they're bustling. They've got electricity, they've got internet access, they've got excellent schools, a lot of people speak English, and the access to resources is a lot more accessible, But then you drive an hour outside of Kumasi or outside of Accra, and you're in these extremely low-income rural areas where you don't have any of those benefits that were accessible in these communities. So there's a huge drop in education, the ability to speak English. Electricity is actually a rarity in a lot of these rural communities. And with that, you also have this very negative stigma, where people who live in the cities refer to the rural communities as the village. And the village is a place where you don't want to be, where you don't want to belong, and the people who live in the village are considered to be unintelligent individuals. And it's a huge problem in the education scene, which will probably have to be a video all on its own, so we'll just table that idea. But anyway, so one of the things that I've been struggling with is I've been trying to get latrines built in my community, because as I said before, there's a huge problem with open defecation. And one of the things that we were actually looking at was a composting latrine, which basically means that the waste that's collected inside of the latrine is then collected and can be applied to crops. But I had a lot of organizations telling me that they wouldn't work with me on that project in a rural community because the people in the village weren't intelligent enough to be able to figure out how to use them, which is just silly on its own. So we decided to go a different route. And so what I'm doing with Prec right now is we're actually building a biodigester, which is connected to a latrine. So biodigester, what does that mean? A biodigester is basically this system that breaks down, or that helps compost green waste or brown waste and generates methane gas. So it collects the gas that's being expelled by green waste materials and brown waste materials. And then you can harvest that methane gas and you can use it to turn on your lights. So now you have electricity in this community that doesn't have electricity. It can also be used to run your cook stoves, which means we're no longer chopping down trees and creating charcoal, so deforestation problem, which we have. And the great thing about it too is that it also means that we're able to take the waste that was broken down inside of these digesters and also apply it to crops. So now you also have a fertilizer. So, what Prec and I are doing is we're building this latrine and this biodigester, and we're hooking up the biodigester to the latrine, and we're demonstrating how we can create our own fertilizer and gas and electricity and all these fantastic things. My favorite part about it is that we're using all local materials. So what we're trying to do is demonstrate the fact that even though we happen to live in a low-income rural community, it doesn't mean that we aren't capable of having advanced technology or sustainable farming practices. And that's why I like working with Prec, because I think one of the biggest problems that's actually happening in terms of the grand scheme of development on an international level is the very fact that we doubt the capabilities of people that live in rural communities, and we shouldn't, because some of the ingenuity that I experience with farmers in terms of their ways of building like seed silos or storage containers, or the tools that they're even building on their own, or even irrigation systems, it's extremely advanced, and it's stuff that these farmers were coming up with because they had no other alternative. They didn't have access to drip irrigation systems, or they didn't have access to seed banks and things like that. So they're creating these things on their own. And there's a stigma thinking that people that live in these rural parts of the country aren't capable of development. They're not intelligent. And you see that in a lot of people, where they've been told that so often that they're not capable, that they just don't believe in what they can actually do. And it's this empowerment component. And so it's really exciting to be able to work with this organization that has this same drive and this same motive to really demonstrate to community members what we're capable of and vastly improve standards of living. Because the amount of money that people spend on charcoal, or the amount of trees that we lose because of creating charcoal, the amount of money that's spent on fertilizers it's extremely high. And it's why we have such a severe issue of poverty, because all of these inputs are being put into a farm that aren't necessarily needed, and now we're trying to teach people how to be sustainable on their own. So that's the current project that I'm working on, and it's really exciting. We're also doing this gray water demonstration. Rainfall happens very rarely here where I live, and so you actually hear a lot of farmers talking about the fact that they can't farm or they don't have crops because the rain didn't fall. And we use water every day, when we bath, when we brush our teeth, when we wash our dishes. And so what we're doing with this gray water demonstration is we're actually talking about how we can use all that water from brushing your teeth, from bathing, from washing dishes, and you can actually use it to irrigate crops. And then this hopefully will be able to demonstrate the fact that you don't have to wait for the rains to come once a year. You can actually have water to irrigate crops year round. So it's going to be this much bigger push for doing small home gardens to feed families, rather than these large mass producing crops that are like 12, 14 kilometers away, which is a huge problem in my community. The fact that people are commuting about 2 hours just to get to farm. So yeah, getting people closer to food, getting food year round, getting people to actually adopt and understand technologies from local resources and materials, and demonstrate how we can be self-sustaining. And I'm hoping that this is something that, it's just, it works, that the community is able to adopt, and I don't know, I hope this project goes well. So, this is a long video, sorry. So that's what I'm working on right now. And I've got some other cool stuff for August, the next month. So, stay tuned, and hope everybody's doing well. I'm doing well out here. And yeah, things are good. Alright, bye.